Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. And, we talked about it last week. It's certainly been in the news, but it's like keeps on coming. And we talked about this in the prep before the podcast today. I've never really seen this in any political party in terms of, every party has a falling out. Even during Clinton, when Gingrich took control of Congress after like 40 years, it never was in Republican control, I think, all the time since FDR. So, every party goes into the wilderness, but this is a new level. And just to kind of put some facts into that. There is a Democratic poll, and only 39% of Democrats think the Democratic Party values work. Not good.
No, it's not good for them at all. I think, you said you've never seen this before. I think this is the first time that a political party has ever been this out of touch. And
That's
I think
it. No, you nailed it. That's
part of it is because of social media and technology and the growing influence of the echo chamber. That we've been talking about this for almost 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to now, when a party started to fall out of favor, they were spending time in their districts. They were talking to their constituents. They were traveling. They actually heard from people. Now they're only hearing from the diehard. They're all stuck in the Washington bubble, reading pro Democratic media, which is also out of touch. Take a look at their ratings. So I don't know that they can help themselves unless they first say, you know what, we have to get out of this bubble and actually listen to people. And I have never been a fan of Hillary Clinton. The one thing she did right was during the 2016, she went on a listening tour to actually talk to people and find out what they wanted. What they wanted was
She had her earbuds in, though. Just kidding.
Right. What they wanted wasn't her, but that she didn't want to hear. But that's what the Democrats need to do. They need to get out of Washington, D.C. They need to start talking to people around the country and not just in their limited congressional districts. They need to talk to other people because they're not seeing what America is seeing.
I don't think that's going to happen, Dr. Lopkin. I think they're going to have to lose another presidential election. Here's some reasons why I think it's the case. We'll talk more about why, because there is the issue of the government shutdown. But before we get into that, one of the reasons, I'll point to this before we get into others after the shutdown issue, is that Bernie and AOC are selling out like the Rolling Stones a la 1975. So I don't know. A year ago we talked about how their influence was waning. No, I think I don't see and progressive is a BS term. I don't believe the communist wing of the Democratic Party is fading anytime soon.
Well, I think they have faded to a certain extent because that's why they lost the election. If the party powerful decide they want to continue to kowtow to the far left, they're going to lose more and more seats. They're going to keep losing the White House because this is not a recipe for success in America. It might play very well in limited congressional districts, but it's certainly not playing well across the country.
I would agree. I think you might be right about the waning, meaning technically, but I think in terms of you taking up the oxygen, that has not stopped. And let's be clear for our listeners, what the progressives slash socialist communists want for America is what Europe is going through, and it is absolutely fascinating. Europe has more people, the EU, than the United States by about 100 million people, roughly. Okay, before this all happened, we talked about this last week, they were at the same level as the United States in terms of GDP, growth, innovation, um, top companies, all plummeting. I think you have to go down to 30 before it's a European company, and their productivity, their GDP is half that. So all the listeners out there that want the, let's just say in quotations, progressivism, then you're looking at Europe, and you're looking at countries also like England that were once right up there that are now shells of themselves, like shells. Your comments, Dr. Lopkin.
Yeah, I mean, on the best of days, Europe isn't what it once was. But to be fair, I think most Americans don't have an idea of actually what is going on in Europe. Because we've
I would
heard
agree.
all of these celebrities going, oh, I'm going to leave the country. I'm going to move to Canada. I'm going to move to England. Well, first of all,
Rosie's
you do
moving
know,
to Ireland, by the way.
Yes, Rosie O'Donnell is moving to Ireland. Well, guess
Goodbye.
what? Neither Canada, England, or Ireland have freedom of the press. There is nothing in their constitutions to protect a free press. England and Canada don't have anything protecting freedom of speech. Ireland does have something that protects free expression, but it can be taken away anytime the government wants. So you are making this determination of what do you want? You want this progressive world where you don't actually have any freedoms.
Yeah, but you don't really say, yeah, that's true too. Okay, that's important. But the average person doesn't really get impacted by that. What the average person gets impacted by is economic opportunity, and increasingly, there are none in Europe, literally,
Well, no,
because of
there are
progressivism.
yeah, there are fading economic opportunities, but I'm going to push back on you with it doesn't these freedoms don't affect the average person because the UK has been going after the average person for insulting people on social media. They actually were demanding that social media companies give them access to the contact information of not just their own citizens, but people around the world who are criticizing the UK government. So
I stand corrected.
this
Once
is
again,
one of
that's why you're the doctor. Yes,
this
that
is
is
one of
true.
our
Because it's
strongest allies, and yet they are cracking down on free speech. And they actually stated that they wanted to um, extradite people from America that criticized them.
there is no question about that, and that is a certainly a relevant situation. But when you use the term allies, I think marriages fade sometimes. relationships fade. Sometimes relationships are just built on convenience. Not all the time, but sometimes. I think allies are allies because it's based on a particular point in time. I believe there is an old Europe, that is Western Europe, and New Europe, which is Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe has a lot more in common with the United States and vice versa than France, England, and basically, I would think, has been nations. And that's why I believe Trump rattling the saber a little bit with NATO, it's very good, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Oh, it's definitely a good thing to rattle the saber in this case. What we're seeing is that Europe still has a Cold War mentality. And that's simply not the case anymore. I'm never going to say that Putin is a good guy. That's simply not true. But he's also not the biggest threat we face anymore. China is a bigger threat. Middle Eastern terrorism is a bigger threat. So we have to adapt what we're doing. And, Europe doesn't seem interested in joining the 21st century. They're stuck with their traditions. And sometimes it's time to move past that. And we're
Yeah,
seeing
but
that.
they're also spoiled brats because I looked at a expose on England's defense capabilities or military capabilities. They fought the Falklands War 40 years ago, and a pretty impressive. We helped them, but a pretty impressive military engagement. They are so weak now; they fail to be a power at all. So because of them, because of us, we've enabled them. They're pathetic losers. They're pathetic politically, ideologically wise, and military wise. And I think they need to stand up on their own 2 feet, and they'll I think they'll be, and both them and we will be much better off. And I believe NATO has basically, yes, Putin is an ass. I get it. More than an ass, he's a monster. But we certainly didn't help the situation. Let's just say that.
No, we didn't help the situation at all. In fact, when the Soviet Union broke up, part of the agreement literally stated that NATO would not move 1 inch closer to Russia. And then the Clinton administration said, yeah, we don't need to follow that. So
Hmm.
NATO has been encroaching on territory that in the treaty we guaranteed we would not encroach on. So, yes, there's more than enough blame to go around. The bigger problem, I think, is we've put up with Europe bad mouthing us for years. Oh, we're uncivilized. They don't like the way we do things, except we are responsible for their defense. We are responsible for their economy. They have huge tariffs on our goods going into the EU, huge regulations on our goods going into the EU, and now they're throwing a temper tantrum because Trump said, "You know what? We're going to do this reciprocally. You want the tariffs to go away, you get rid of yours."
Yes, and you know something? The feeble-minded people, especially in mainstream media, don't understand that, and even they're too stupid to understand regulatory tariffs. Meaning, in Japan, you cannot sell an American car because of regulation. So it's a implicit tariff that has real-world impacts. But before we move on, we need to address the issue, which I think is hysterical, of the government shutdown, which I think, 30 years ago was like, oh my God, I used to like it scared me the first time. I don't know, whatever. Now I'm like a big yawn. I really could give a shit, quite frankly. However, I think it is funny how when it came under Biden's administration, it was the worst thing that could ever happen to America. We may not ever even survive this, but Dr. Loppin looks like only one Democrat voted for, even though all the funding was still there. Your comments.
Yeah, the Republican controlled House pushed through a funding bill that will take the government to September, which is the next fiscal year, essentially leaving spending flat with the exception of a bump in defense spending. And the Democrats are lockstep, with one exception in the House, saying they'd rather shut the government down than give Trump the victory. And again, for years, anytime they were in power and they needed Republican votes to get something through, oh my God, a government shutdown, it's horrible. It's like, now, first of
Life
all,
ends. Are you kidding me?
right,
Life
yes.
ends.
The first of all, the fact of the matter is, even if the government has a total shutdown, there are certain agencies that are not affected. Social Security payments go out during a shutdown. Medicare and Medicaid payments continue to go out during a shutdown. Every government worker that is furloughed for the shutdown gets that time off, but when they return to work, they get all their back pay. So the idea that a government shutdown is catastrophic is a myth pushed by whichever party doesn't want the shutdown. Now, of
You,
course, after years of the Democrats pushing that, oh, a government shutdown is catastrophic, now they want to shut the government down because they refuse to work with Trump.
100%. But I will say, yes, both parties play into that. But it's Democrats, because they're so tied into entitlements and government, they freak out a little more. But who wants to split hairs? I don't really care. But the bigger issue of the Democratic spiral is hysterical, and it hits home very close to Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. Your congressperson, I emphasize that again, your congressperson, the purple haired genius, Rosa DeLaura, um, put out a video that is unwatchable. Did you see the video first?
Well, first of all, I have to ask you which one. She has
That there you
actually
go.
put she has actually put out over a dozen videos in the past few weeks because she thinks she's going to be a TikTok star.
She had one that you have a 70-year-old person with purple hair trying to say these buzzwords to try to be cool.
Yes, I saw
It
that
goes.
one.
It's about as cool as like the sun. There you go. She looks like a complete idiot. And then there's a clip of her in a congressional hearing, basically outraged because it's sexist that crash dummies, and for our listeners, you have to see this, have a beer or two. I'm not encouraging drinking, but this is kind of worth it. Uh, she's saying that crash dummies are sexist because they're all men. Either you're mentally ill or you got way too much time on your hands. It's one or the other.
Okay.
Or
In
you're
ter-
Indian.
in
That helps.
terms of the problems that the country is facing, crash
Hmm.
test dummies is pretty low on the list. However, I actually do have to defend her on this, not the sexist comment, but a study was done probably about 20 years ago that showed that men and women are actually affected differently in car crashes, and there are female crash test dummies because of that study. So I don't know why she's yelling that they need more of them. They're already being used.
Okay, but her pea brain
Yeah.
wasn't talking about the technical aspects. She was talking about the wokeness of
Yes.
it. So that's, yeah. If it was talking about, yes, because women and men are built differently. Just throw that wild concept out to everyone. So yeah, but no, she wasn't talking about the structural implications or ramifications. No, she's insane, and I think she's trying to position. We're really fortunate because we're in Connecticut. We have two rock stars in our midst. Rosa DeLaura, the purple-haired genius. And then we also have Chris Murphy, the person that walked away from his house. I'm talking financially, and now has walked away from his wife. And he is it's just been uncovered that he's had a fling with Tara McGowan, maybe a third of his age, a super far left. I'll use the term reporter, and that's really using the term loosely, no pun intended. And question, Dr. Locken, does it impact him in any way? I
Well,
think it does, by the way. And let me just be clear just for 1 second, because yeah, unto itself, who gives a you know what? But it's that he's a strong believer in education, but his kids go to private school. Walking away from a house. The guy's less than exactly stellar. The character leads a little bit
oh,
to
he
be
has
desired.
he has no character whatsoever.
None.
Does this hurt him? Honestly, I don't think it does, because his chances of ever getting any political position outside of Connecticut is pretty close to zero. I mean, we here in Connecticut have a long history of Democrats thinking they're going to run for president or be cabinet members, and generally in the polling they tend to fall somewhere under the margin of error.
That is correct. And you know something? That's why you're the doctor. And I love this because it applies to other people like Kamala. The list can go on, and certainly Biden. Super low, devoid of talent, but high on ambition. Most normal people, like Clint Eastwood said, a man needs to know his limitations, but these people don't. Chris Murphy basically is maybe a middle manager, and that would be shooting for the stars, correct?
Yeah, I don't even know that he's qualified
Claims
to be middle management. But
claims processor at the Aetna. There you go. But
yes,
high on ambition, I'll give him credit for that. Yeah, you're right. I like that. It's yes. So he's decreased his chances of winning from 0.0005 to zero. There you go. I agree
something
with that
like that.
100%.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
the
but it
simple
is
fact.
interesting when. Go ahead.
The simple fact of the matter is, if you're going to run for president, and this keeps happening to Connecticut politicians. The whole reason that Murphy is, you know, trying to push to be a rising star and he's all over the media is because he was convinced he was going to have a cabinet position in a Harris presidency. Well,
He would have.
Blumenthal did the same thing with the Hillary Clinton presidency. He was sure he was going to be head of the Department of Justice. And well, guess what? They keep backing these candidates that can't win. And not because they're female, not because it's a woman of color in Harris's case, because they're simply not qualified. And the American electorate sees that every time they open their mouths.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. But it also is, even like Chrissy Dodd, lightweights at best, having the audacity, the chutzpah to think they're ready for prime time. I think that is absolutely friggin' hysterical. What's not hysterical, though, is when you have Bill Maher basically saying if they continue to behave like this, and to cite an example, there was a hearing, they have a trans woman now in the Democratic Party, and a Republican said, I yield to whatever their name is, uh, and he called the
Called her
trans
Miss,
a
yes,
male,
called it Mister, yes.
Mister, and them freaks out. It just doesn't play well, and when you have Bill Maher saying that they may never win another, and I know never it's just a term that's used, but
Yeah.
it's going to be a long time. That's more accurate. If that they'll ever win a presidential election if they behave like that. Like for instance, being so stupid. That's Cory Booker, not a genius, by the way, but having like Cory Booker arrange a social media campaign that everyone says the same thing using the profanity shit, I guess it was, right? Not knowing boy genius, that it's social media. Hello, yeah, it's not 1990. You can't say that exactly the same thing. And then also, Dr. Loudon, there's a lot here, but I'll leave with this. I think it's really kind of interesting that now they think to get the youth vote, which they're bleeding, you got to say swear words. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're desperate to win back the young vote. They lost ground with young voters by a tremendous amount in the
Hmm.
2024 election. And they think the way to do it is to swear, is to pretend they know something about video games. And, you know, I,
Superhero videos. Remember, we were your defender.
well, that
Did
that
you
was
see
that
that?
yes, that was actually a video game they were trying
Oh,
to
I didn't know that. See.
duplicate Mortal Kombat. And
Okay, there you go.
I have to give a shout out to my wife on this because she came across that video where they're all going, choose your defender. And in response to the post, my wife posted a photo of Tulsi Gabbard and said, chosen.
Tell her yes, thumbs up on that one.
Yeah,
That's quite good. But it is cringeworthy, the whole situation. You had the hearings, a while back. You had the whole trans thing. It's just really becoming problematic for them. I don't know how they get through this. Even things like the sanctuary city hearings. Not a good look. Your thoughts? I mean,
no, it's
Mayor Wu, the same moron, and I use the term moron. I'm sure she has an Ivy League degree, but it certainly does not prevent her from being an abject moron. The same person that had the Christmas party with no whites. Talk about an entitled piece of shit.
yeah, honestly, I don't know how the Democrats are going to turn this around unless they actually say, you know what, we were wrong about our the issues that we chose. I mean, the sanctuary cities and immigration, the transgender issue. These are issues that nationally 80% of the country
At least.
agrees, and they're taking the 20% side. Well, guess what? You cannot win a national election if you are against 80% of the population.
Well, I don't know about that, Lotkin, because these people, you look at Al Green and others, they're not exactly Mensa candidates. Are you sure they know that high level math? I'm serious.
They
Like
may
20
not.
goes into 80 goes, I don't know. They may
I
not, but it's
I,
certainly interesting to see. I mean, go
I
ahead.
actually think it's a bigger problem than that, because we're seeing now there have been a number of arrests in political corruption charges here in Connecticut, and everybody thought this was a local issue, and the folks that are being charged have publicly said, no, no, this comes from the top of the state Democratic Party. It benefited, and they listed all of our congressmen, all of our senators. And I'm starting to think that the reason the Democratic Party isn't paying attention to what Americans think about the issues is because they've gotten so used to rigging the elections that they think the voter doesn't matter anymore.
I think that's part of it, but I think the other part is they're enriching themselves at the voters' expense, so therefore they're out of touch. They're not connected to the economy. They're connected to trust funds, or I'm saying slush funds, more accurately. That's why they're so outraged at Doge.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
if you cut, it's like a spoiled brat on some kind of inheritance allowance. You cut it off, and little Biffy's got to get his ass in gear and work at the gas station.
yeah, I mean, talking about the slush funds, Act Blue, which is a Democratic activist group, was
Hmm.
getting a ton of funds from USAID. Now they're actually firing people. People are leaving before they get prosecuted. But USAID issued a memo yesterday having people come in to shred their documents because they don't want the Justice Department to get a hold of any evidence of what they've been doing.
Certainly, but it is a little interesting because it's like the basement when you basically take people off or fire people in the government. Okay, you do it by hand. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, shredding's part of it, but they're probably so backwards. There's no computer linkage to that, but that's another issue. I think it is interesting you say USAID. Samantha Powers is her name. She was once an ambassador to Africa. Okay, she's always been a public servant, probably making a buck 50, something like that from USAID. Uh, you're a smart person. You'd have to be an investment guru to turn that salary into what she's currently worth, which is over 12 million. Seems to be a common theme for democratic socialists. Maybe that's part of their socialism that they're damn good at investing. Not in the Karl Marx manifesto, I believe.
No, that
Go
didn't
ahead.
come out of Marx, but I mean, maybe it came out of Groucho Marx, but
There you
it's
go. I like that. Yes.
it is amazing how much the Democratic Socialists rely on capitalism to enrich themselves, but they don't want anybody else being able to do it.
Yes,
We've
that is
said
true.
this
Even
over
even
and
our
over
buddy,
again.
yep, even our buddy Bernie got thrown out of a commune for being a lazy shit. Is worth probably 10 million when we really do the math. Um, so really interesting. When you talk about people who can't do the math, Linda McMahon is cutting the education budget by a half. Do you know that? The staff. I'm sorry,
No,
the
yeah,
staff by half.
she's letting go
Um,
of half the staff, and we're
do you think our
starting.
educational do you think our educational system will survive that?
Oh, absolutely, without a
I'm kidding.
doubt.
It's rhetorical. Hello. Jesus. Yes.
You're actually seeing this in multiple departments. Not to the extent of the Department of Education, but they're starting to let people go on a fairly large scale. And the reason for this is because these departments did not work. And under the Biden administration, they
Wait, I
hired.
have to interject. Excuse me. I know I have to interject. I think the Department of Education was among the most effective because let me be clear. From 1978, so let's call it roughly 50 something years, 50 years ago, whatever, it went from we were 40 something years ago. Sorry about that. We went from number one in education to dead last. Now that's pretty effective.
Oh, yes,
That's effective. No, come on. You can't
well,
do that. You try doing that.
oh,
You're
of
a
course.
smart guy. You go from number one to dead last
Oh,
in less than 50 years.
of course you can do it. It's all up. It all comes back down to Casey Stengel. It was a team effort.
Yes, certainly was. But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be singing the blues. How do you like this concept, Lapkin? I think it does go to the states. It's going to further fuel the exodus from blue states. How do you like that? Because how do you like this? I believe in my little theory that the constraints will be off blue states, whatever constraints there are from the Department of Ed, and they'll be willing to go full bore woke, and it'll just be more reasons, not that there's not enough now, to exit New York. The list goes on. Am I not correct in that? I think I am.
I think it
You
will.
let blue go blue, it's going to be off the hook.
I I I don't know how much it'll accelerate the process because it's going pretty quickly now. But
That's true.
you
Light,
are
yeah, it can't
you
go
are
much
going
faster
to
than
see.
light.
Yeah, you are going to see more people. You're going to see more opportunities in red states. And you're already seeing this. I mean, red states have been turning their educational systems around. For years, it was, they were the joke. They were
The
hillbillies. They
dummies.
couldn't read. And now they're actually turning back the clock on their educational systems and bringing back things like phonics, like actually teaching math. And I
What the
think
hell is going on here? Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. And the other thing on that, I do think we talked about it last week, so I did not forget. But you think about it, if you really do a deep dive on how bad things are, we talked about that case in Hartford, that young lady who was like at the top of her class, right?
Yeah,
But couldn't read or, yeah,
completely
yes.
illiterate, according to her, and graduated with honors
Okay. And then you got to take a real gasp. She got into UConn. There's people
with a
that would give their
scholarship.
right on. Yeah, with a scholarship. And I contend, how do you like this? She would have passed UConn.
Oh,
No,
I'm
I'm
sure.
not kidding with
I'm
you.
sure she would have. I have no
Yes,
doubt UConn would have graduated her.
there you go. So there you go. Well, the Department of Ed, that ship cannot sail quick enough. And there's also, talking about, the democratic mindset or lack thereof, carbon footprint is so huge. You don't even want to burn leaves, but you can burn Tesla chargers, dealership cars, a lot of plastic in those things. That's a highly contributory to the destruction of the ozone and global warming. So why is it okay? I don't understand that. And you're burning electric car vehicle infrastructure. Isn't that like basically sacrilegious? What's going on?
Pretty much. I mean, it goes to show that they don't really care about the environment.
Thank you very much.
The whole electric car, anti-fossil fuel had nothing to do with the environment. It was
Thank
all
you.
about an anti-business
Thank you.
agenda that
And
they had.
also a Ponzi scheme as well. It was a slush fund and anti-business and control, as quoting Marx, of the means of production. That's all it was about. They didn't
Yes.
give a shit. They didn't even know what it was.
No, they've been very quick to show their true colors over the last 2 months, because all of these issues that they were so passionate about, electric cars, avoiding government shutdowns, as we said earlier,
Oh my God, yes.
they're throwing them all out the window in what is essentially just a massive temper tantrum. And I find it hysterical when they claim, well, we're the resistance. Really? Where were you during the Obama administration when he prosecuted more government whistleblowers than every president before him combined? Where were you
Correct.
when they were hiding Biden's mental faculties? You were
Well,
silent.
no, he was up for the job. He just used an auto
Yeah,
signer because he had carpal tunnel. Correct?
yes, he was running circles around everybody behind closed doors, as
Mm-hmm.
Jean Pierre said on numerous occasions. So the idea that this is a resistance and that they actually have the moral high ground is bull. They're throwing a temper tantrum. And now, as we saw over the weekend at Tesla dealerships and charging stations, that temper tantrum is actually turning violent.
Well, that's not. That's in their playbook. Violence. If a Republican has a Tea Party rally, that's over the top. I mean, you can burn chargers. What if someone got hurt? They don't know who's in that dealership. Yeah, it could be late. Maybe someone's working late, and you burn the place down. You could have killed someone. Yes, kill.
Well, I mean, that's possible, but you're setting fire to electric chargers. I mean, that can cause explosions that's going to hurt people, that don't even have to be standing right there. These are, there's a lot going on here. It is absolutely ridiculous that they have degenerated that quickly to, you know, again, it just blows their story of any moral high ground. They've lost it.
Yeah, they have lost it, and I think time is running out. Like we use the analogy of drug addict and alcoholic. Time is not on your side. If you don't get help, things are going to go bad real quickly, and they're going really bad. I mean, you have Bill Maher, you have their own internal polling. 39% of Democrats believe they don't believe in work. I mean, it's got they gotta. I believe you're the doctor. I think if Trump continues to ascend, and by the way, there might actually be a ceasefire, okay, which I think is obviously is fantastic, but it's one more. What do you? Let's have the doctor analyze that. Let's just say there is a ceasefire in Ukraine, okay? There is a ceasefire. What does that do to the whole situation with the Democrats? I mean, 4 years of numbnuts, and all of a sudden 2 months of Trump, and there's a ceasefire. Doesn't look good. Does not look good.
No, but it's also just par for the course. I mean, remember, the Biden administration said their hands were tied on the border. There was nothing they could do without legislation, and the Republicans were blocking the legislation. Trump came in 6 weeks later, borders already secure. 4 years of Biden's inflation. Oh, there's nothing we can do. It started out. It's transitory. Now the Democrats have been yelling. Well, he's been in office for 6 weeks. Why hasn't he fixed it yet? Core inflation came out today lower than expected. It's starting to turn around. Having the
Yeah, but isn't there a
ceasefire,
bigger
it's
issue, Lopkin? I agreed. And job openings have just ticked up, even though they had a little bit less than expected before. But I mean, isn't it really? Don't even isn't the average person, not just political wonks, but the average person start thinking? I think this is happening. Saying, whose side are you on? Because they're cheering for our defeat. Yeah, politics are politics, but you kind of have to say, "Oh, this is great. That's great. We're on board with this." You can't always be the Debbie Downer because the average person can say, "What are you for?"
well,
Like you're saying, this,
I
we
think
don't want
that
to cease fire. Like really?
yeah, they don't want a ceasefire. They don't want to work with other, with countries across the political spectrum. I honestly think what's going to be the demise of the Democratic Party, as though it hasn't fallen apart already, is when people actually see prices coming down. And everybody has been talking about egg prices. Egg prices
They're
are
down.
actually lower, they are coming down. So when people can go to the grocery, spend $100 and get
Gas is
more,
down too.
yes, and get more than they were getting during the Biden administration, they're going to start going, oh, wait a minute. The Democrats have
Yeah,
been
I
lying.
agree. I agree with that. But also, you're a strategist. Aren't they like petulant children? If you're going to say something, you need to give something more time. Like they were freaking out. He was in office for a month, and they're talking about egg prices. But then you
Yes.
kind of lose your credibility when they start going down.
Well,
Like now, what do you say?
they lost their credibility when they started because they were going off about inflation that they caused. So,
Created.
you know, so
Well,
the
the other thing,
credibility was
the other
pretty low to begin with.
yes, there were some hearings as well with some Ivy League, Barnard College, some others. Um, I don't think that helps the face or the image of the Democratic Party when it's been going on for over a year now. These Palestinian radicals, okay, a lot of it's astroturfed. Columbia, I love that they got some defunding. Uh, I think the whole thing does not help, in terms of what's going on. Their branding.
No, because they've chosen to take their stands in the worst possible cases. The sanctuary cities cases, again, where 80% of the country says, no, we want these people deported. And I mean, the one that blew me away, and I'm blanking on the name of the Democratic lawmaker that said this, but she has been pegged as a rising star in the Democratic Party. And she came out on an interview saying crossing the border illegally is not a crime. Well, if
Is
you
that the
act,
one that did the rebuttal?
I don't think it was. I think it was another
Okay.
one. But It
The list
absolutely
is a big list, so it's hard
Yes,
to
it
really.
absolutely cracked me up because Judge Janine Pirro on Fox actually quoted the article number that makes it a crime and says what you would get if you are found guilty of this. So, yes,
Yeah,
it
facts
is a
don't mean
crime.
anything. Don't worry about it.
Right, it is a crime, and, they're unaware of what a crime is. What do you expect from people that can't define what a woman is? But you're
Yes.
seeing this more and more. They're choosing the wrong hill to die on. And I
Well,
cannot.
they're so indoctrinated. I don't think choice is really the operative word. I think it's habit. It's habitual at this point. They can't help themselves. I'm dead serious. They're
Well,
beyond rational thought
it
at this
could
point in time. Yes.
it could be. There's a great video that Robert Reich released. Now, if any of our listeners don't know who he is,
Economist.
yeah, he's an economist. He worked in the Ford administration. He worked in the Carter administration. So he is, bipartisan. He's also was in the cabinet of Bill Clinton. And he actually came out with a video telling Democrats what they need to do to turn the party around. And if you listen closely, what he is saying they need to do is exactly what Trump is doing.
That will be hard for them to follow, but I don't think it's hard for our listeners to follow us, is it?
It's not. We want to hear what you have to say. What are your opinions on all these issues? Let us know at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Message us. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know your thoughts. And of course, you can find every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin. I'll see you next week.
We'll see you then.